to do is I'm just going to tell a couple of stories, my personal experience with education and also how we ended up leading to the birth of SkillShare, and also share some stories from our community of some awesome teachers and students that have evolved out of it as well. This is one of my favorite quotes. So one of our engineers sent this to us internally, and I felt like it totally made a lot of sense. Education is the only true global religion because it's something that everyone believes in. We find that a lot with the work that we're doing is that everybody has an education, everyone has an opinion about education. Everyone's been through it from kindergarten to the time they graduate high school, college, or grad school. And everyone has an opinion of why it's broken or what's awesome about it. And with our company, what we decided to do is really dissect that and figure out how we can make it adaptable to the internet. So the story I want to tell, it really starts in 2000 to 2004. So much like many of you, when I was growing up, my parents really hammered for me to do really good in school, do a lot of extracurricular activities, study really hard for the LSATs and the SATs, and work really hard because you're really going to get into college and you're going to become very successful and become a doctor or lawyer. So I did that. So I worked really hard, memorized a lot of things for exams, and spat them out and walked out of the room and forgot it. Did everything I could to get into college. So I got into the University of Virginia. And when I got there, I felt like I got really duped. I really felt like I got scammed. I got there, I was like, wow, this sucks. Everything I'm doing is gearing me to become an investment banker. So no offense to anyone that's an iBanker. But everything at that school is geared towards just putting me down this very particular path. And I felt like everything that was promised to me wasn't happening. So becoming really successful, be really smart, meeting a lot of awesome, well, I did meet a lot of awesome people. I felt like I partied a lot. I'm pretty sure that's pretty similar to everyone's college experience. What was really weird about my experience at UVA was I got taught in this format. So I went to a class, I sat in a room, got lectured, didn't really want to learn the topics that somebody chose for me. Then I would memorize them as much as I could, and then spat them out on a test and would leave the room. And 4 years later, I graduated, still more confused than I ever was. I was pretty fortunate because at UVA, I think that was the first year where they did a lot of on-campus interviews. So I was the guy that would just interview and put my application and my resume as many places as I could. And I was lucky to get an interview with an advertising agency. And at the time, I really didn't know you could get a job doing anything creative. So that's how much I didn't know about what was happening outside of my industry. And what was really unique is they flew me to New York, and all I remember, I was like 20, 21, that the office building that I was interviewing at had red walls and people were wearing jeans. Like, man, this is so fascinating. I can't believe you could work in an environment like this. And I felt like I finally found something that I was naturally good at. And I felt like education really educated me out of being creative. So not too long after that, I ended up getting to grad school at this school in Richmond, Virginia called the VCU Brandcenter. And it was a school around advertising, and this is an image from our lobby. So it was a really creative school. But the really unique thing about my experience there was on the very first day of class, this huge guy walks in. You hear stories about this guy. So this guy, in the background, the context behind Mark Fensky is he was one of the guys that invented Nike. So the branding behind Nike, he worked with Dan White and Craig Just Do It. Their team was really heralded with really pioneering branding as we know it today. So on the very first day of class, you're really excited. He walks in. He says, one of my first classes I had at VCU was creative thinking. So obviously, I did a lot of financial modeling in undergrad, so I was really excited for this class and really didn't know what to expect. And he came in, and the first word he said was gum. All of you guys, and this is orientation, by the way, so all of you guys have 60 seconds next week to present something about gum, and then he just walked off, and that was it. It was really weird because, when you come from a very structured environment, everyone's like, what do we do? What are we supposed to do? Do you mean gums or gum? Like chewing gum or your gum with your teeth? So everyone's just kind of frazzled. They don't know what to do because everything up to that point, our schooling was like, you have to do it like this, and the output it looks like this, and you have to come to school like that. So what started happening over that week is, as the deadline came for our first day of class, people started just kind of stop asking questions. They just started getting shit done. And what I saw in that hour is one of the most creative things I ever saw in my entire life. So one guy came on stage. He literally started chewing gum and tried to break the the Guinness World Record for the biggest bubble. He obviously didn't break it, but that was really cool. Another guy made a 60-second film about all the gum he found in Richmond, when he brought out like a little art sculpture he made. I tried to tell a funny story about gum. It wasn't too funny, so I was kind of hurt. No, I'm just kidding. But what was really interesting is that throughout the 2 years at that school, it was literally in this format. There was very hardly any lecturing. We had no textbooks. We had no final exams. I never took an exam at that school. I never bought a textbook. And they taught us in this really different format that put us at the center and allowed us to learn by collaborating with other people and by just working on projects and taking action. So that really started, I think that moment when I graduated from school really got me to think about the difference between education and learning. And I felt like for the first time, I got to work on things that I chose to work on. I felt like they actually designed an experience around me as a student. So that's what really started and kickstarted me thinking about how could I go to a school that was undergrad and graduate that was so polarizing and so different, and how can my education be so different, and how could we create something that really fostered the education that I got at grad school. So when we started thinking about, how could you bring that type of education online, the analogy we always use internally is kind of like the Wild Wild West. So that I always believe the internet's like the Wild Wild West. I still think it is today. The only when it first came to being about 10, 20 years ago, like any town in the Wild Wild West, you have to build all the infrastructure. So you have to build a way for people to get to the town. So you have to build roads, and I felt like AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe really paved the way for that to happen. You have to build some way for people to have a sense of community and talk to each other. I think Facebook really paved the way for the social network. You have to pave the way for people to communicate with each other really quickly, and I think email and Gmail and Twitter really pioneer that. And I think what's happening right now is that you really have to pioneer a way for people to learn online. And I think that's what a lot of companies are trying to do, and I think that's the next phase of what's going to happen on the internet. And the way to educate people on the internet and online is you can't do it in the same format that's been done for the past 200 to 300 years. So a question we ask always internally is like, how do you actually educate 1 billion people? If you really, really internalize that, and how do you educate them around all the real-world creative skills that are needed today in our society? So one of the biggest problems with education is that by the time a traditional school would teach some skill around programming, most people would claim that class would be kind of outdated. Because the world moves so fast, the internet is the best place to educate people around these new skills that are needed. So we don't really need to go into the college debt crisis or anything like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have heard that. What I'd like to do next is share a couple stories of what has evolved out of SkillShare, which is a company that we started. So what we did was we really modeled the experience around putting the student at the center. So what that means is, the entire experience is completely decentralized. It's very project-based or very action-oriented or around doing and collaborating. A lot of the students collaborate with other students. So the basic premise that only one person can teach is completely thrown out the window. What we're starting to see is that students learn in different ways. They move at a different pace. And what we're starting to see is students that move at a faster pace pull up students that are a little further behind and teach them what they just learned. And through that model, that very distributed model on the internet, it really allows you to start educating people at scale. What we're also starting to see is teachers are moving from lecturing to becoming more of a facilitator, more of a designer or curator. We're starting to see a more open and flexible model, and where we're starting to see students moving at their own pace, as fast or slow as they want to go. So I'll show one of my favorite classes. So not too long ago, we launched our version of online classes, and this is Elliot. So Elliot was really famous because he taught the first sneakerology class at CMU. And when he heard about SkillShare, he was like, man, this platform is awesome. I really want to figure out how I could teach as many people as I can. So he taught a sneakerology class, and the class was basically centered around designing your own sneaker concept. So as soon as this class went up, like every sneaker blog picked it up, like Hypebeast, like the Nike aficionados, like pretty much every sneaker blog picked it up, and about 1,100 students from all around the world started enrolling to the class. And what Elliot did is he went out and he got really creative of how he was going to teach. So he actually didn't really lecture that much. He interviewed this guy named Frank the Butcher, which is a very heralded guy in the street culture, and basically just interviewed him about his inspiration behind making sneakers, shared those with his students. He also held a lot of online office hours, so as students are uploading their projects and showing their designs, he would give them real-time feedback. He would also double that with some short lectures he would give them. A lot of the students started collaborating online, so they would ask each other questions, they would give feedback on the designs that were being uploaded, and some of the students were meeting around the world in real life and sharing their work with each other and learning. What was really cool to see is that students from all around the world started uploading all these great sketches and images of all these things they were creating. These are 4 of my favorite ones. There's probably hundreds that were happening throughout the class. But when we first put it up, we literally thought no one would actually complete the project. But I think what we noticed is when you put the student at the center and you give them all the tools and resources in the network and the community, great things can start happening. Another great example is a class around jewelry making. So this is Jenny, and she has a blog called I Spy DIY, and basically the whole class is around making your own bracelet and necklace. And the same thing happened. They went through that same process, and you can see these students that have never created jewelry before start creating really unique things. And what's really unique about this class is all the materials are the same. So they all bought the same materials, but the output was completely different. And I think that really shows you how, if you put the student at the center and you teach them in a different way, a lot of creative things can start happening. So to close, because I have about a minute left, this is a question that I ask myself all the time. If I had to design an education for my kids, their kids, their kids' kids' kids, what would that look like? And I think that's what we're striving to do, and hopefully a lot of you in the audience could try this new format as well. And I think that's how you end up educating 1 billion people on the internet. So thank you.